You've tuned into Radio Northern Beaches. We live stream on rnb.org.au across the northern beaches of New South Wales, Australia and all over the world. You can also catch us local on 88.7 and 90.3 FM. Our podcasts are available at your convenience at rnb.org.au or rnbpodcast.com.au. Don't forget to check out our social media, Facebook and Instagram, which you can access from our website rnb.org.au. So you and your friends don't miss any episodes. Don't forget to follow and share. Now here's our latest podcast. You've tuned in to Listen and Chat with Chrissy Mack on Radio Northern Beaches. This week we're diving into the history of rock and roll. Why, you ask? Because Radio Northern Beaches fundraising event is on this weekend, the 28th of February. And you can find your tickets at rnb.org.au, Rock the Radio, or you can jump on and find a bit more about the event on northernbeachesentertainment.com.au. Now, we will be having a couple of auction items at this special event. One is a signed guitar by Angry Anderson. Again, you'll find that information on our websites. And Stacey's Got a Gun, who are a local band, will be auctioning themselves off to the highest bidder for a one-night show. And you can have them at your party or at your event just by bidding and winning. Of course, conditions apply. All right, it's time to dive in to the history of rock and roll. Now, rock and roll explodes onto the stage. This is a big bang around the 1950s. The energy of rhythm and blues collided with country music, creating a sound that shattered the status quo. It wasn't just a new genre, it was a teenage revolution that changed the world's pulse forever. For example, popular songs for that era were Bill Haley and the Comets with Rock Around the Clock, Elvis Presley's Hound Dog, and Little Richard's Tutti Frutti. In interviews with many of the rock stars, they mention Muddy Waters singing Got My Mojo Working, guitar hero Chuck Berry performing Maybelline, and Little Richard Tutti Frutti. While Elvis Presley, king of rock and roll, in 1956 belted out Heartbreak Hotel. Before rock and roll was a global phenomenon, rock was hillbilly cat, music and jump blues found in small clubs and indie labels. This era celebrates the pioneers like Elvis Presley and Carl Perkins, who brought a raw, high-voltage swing to the airways. Jerry Lee Lewis sang Whole Lot of Shakin' Going On, Buddy Holly, That'll Be the Day, and Carl Perkins' Blue Suede Shoes. This was referred to as the Golden Age. This era also gave birth to American Bandstand. By 1964, the sound of America had been exported, polished, and sent back across the Atlantic. Led by the Beatles, a wave of British bands took the charts by storm, blending melodic pop with a gritty, blues-inspired edge that redefined the band dynamic. Songs such as the Rolling Stones' Satisfaction, The Kinks' You Really Got Me, The Who, I Can't Explain, filled the airways, and the Beach Boys belted out I Get Around. It was a British invasion and the Americans decided to fight back. Parallel to the rock charts, a soulful movement was rising from Detroit to Memphis, honouring the incredible vocal power and tight grooves of Motown to Stax. Music that provided the emotional heartbeat for the civil rights era, with songs like Aretha Franklin's Respect, Otis Redding Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, and The Temptations' My Girl. Pioneers of this genre were Sam Cooke, Ray Charles, Jackie Wilson, and James Brown, amongst others. Because it so powerfully evokes the whole gamut of human emotions, soul lives on today. As the 60s progressed, folk music met the electric guitar. This was a moment rock became serious art. Musicians began experimenting with distortion and volume, moving away from simple love songs towards complex, socially conscious themes. Bob Dylan gave us Like a Rolling Stone, The Doors, Light My Fire, and Jefferson Airplane, White Rabbit. Few people knew that Dylan's defiant gesture signalled a new kind of cultural revolution, symbolised by a creative new approach to popular music, giving way to the reinvention of rock in the mid-60s. Rock became the definitive voice of youth identity. This era captured the spirit of the late 60s, where the music was loud, the hair was long, and the songs were anthems for a generation looking to build a new world. Jimi Hendrix personified the paradoxes of rock in the late 60s. Performing in the midst of a war tearing America apart, Hendrix preached peace, love, and understanding. This era gave us such bands as the Grateful Dead, Santana, and Jefferson Airplane. And we can't forget Janis Joplin, as well as Crosby, Stills and Nash, and of course the Rolling Stones. Sadly, in that era, drugs killed some of rock and roll's biggest names, giving rise to the song from the Grateful Dead, I Will Survive. The late 60s and early 70s saw the instrument itself become the star. This time highlights the virtuosos who pushed the electric guitar to its absolute limits, turning the stage into a place of epic, blues-drenched improvisation, giving us guitar heroes such as Jimi Hendrix Experience, Purple Haze, Eric Clapton from Cream, Sunshine of Your Love, and Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven. Though amplified guitars had appeared earlier in the big bands of the 1940s, the modern instrument, developed by Les Paul and Leo Fender, only achieved its present-day prominence thanks to the triumph of rock and roll. As the stadium era began, rock became a massive spectacle. From the rise of the glam to the perfection of the studio album, the 70s were about big sounds, big production, and the birth of classic rock as we know it today. This era brought us Fleetwood Mac, Go Your Own Way, The Eagles, Hotel California, and Elton John, Rocket Man. The 1970s were the best of times and also the worst. Rock and roll had never been a bigger business. Recording sessions had never been more elaborate. Stage acts had never been showier, but thanks to the sheer scale of the industry, rock's identity as an outsider's art form had never been so precarious. By the mid-70s, some felt rock had become too bloated. Punk was the reset button. It was fast, raw, and stripped-down music that proved you didn't need to be a virtuoso to start a band. You just needed something to say. This era brought us the Ramones, Blitzkrieg Bop, The Clash, London Calling, and The Jam, In the City. As the history of rock and roll put it, by the Rolling Stones, the wrath of the entire nation focused on a single rock band when the Sex Pistols released God Save the Queen during the Queen Elizabeth's Silver Jubilee in 1977. They aimed to inflame. Forming in McLaren's fetish clothes store, they threatened a depressed country with anarchy in the UK. They cursed on television, egged crowds on to acts of ritual violence, and finally flamed out on a harrowing American tour. Short-lived though the punk movement was, it opened rock up to a new wave of rock artists, from Elvis Costello to Nirvana. Following the punk explosion, rock branched out into new wave and alternative. This era celebrated the DIY spirit and the diverse sounds that emerged from college radio stations, paving the way for the modern rock landscape, such as REM, Radio Free Europe, U2, I Will Follow, and the B-52s, Rock Lobster. In the 1980s, rock had irony, flash, and more shock and sex appeal than ever. By beaming rock video clips around the world, MTV became rock's first global network and created a powerful new corporate medium, complete with wild imagery and calculated self-censorship. At the same time, inner city youth improvised a controversial medium of their own in the form of rap. Like all of its unkept and outspoken predecessors, this latest new wave would turn into a big business, but only by coming up from the underground. Well, that brings us to the end of our podcast on the history of rock and roll. Now, if you really want some good understanding of the history of rock and roll, go and seek out the history of rock and roll, which was done by the Rolling Stones, and it's an unprecedented documentary culled from 10,000 hours of concert and archival footage, jam-packed with 204 interviews featuring rock's biggest stars. So see if you can find that one. Now that you have all the information and the history of rock and roll, it's time to experience and live it by attending the Rock the Radio fundraiser on the 28th of February. It's an evening show and we have an auction with a guitar signed by Angry Anderson, and you can also bid on the band Stacey's Got a Gun for a private performance. So hop on to our website, rnb.org.au or northernbeachesentertainment.com.au and purchase your tickets. And don't forget, Radio Northern Beaches is run by community volunteers and they don't get any funding. So this is an opportunity for you to support Radio Northern Beaches, attend and help us raise money to run our radio station, and we would be most appreciative. And you'll have an absolutely wonderful time. And don't forget, it's all about dress up. You come in your favourite rock and roll era outfits or your favourite rock and roll t-shirt, and there are prizes for the best dressed and the best dancers. So see you there. Rock the Radio is being held at Manly Leagues Club, 563 Pittwater Road, Brookvale, on the 28th of February. Rock the Radio rock concert is supported by the Rotary Club of Warringah, Project 76, Spin 363D, Manly Leagues Club, Northern Beaches Entertainment and Radio Northern Beaches.
Australia, the lucky country. We've got meat pies. We've got the world's best beer. But most importantly, top of the list, we've got Radio Northern Beaches 88.7, 90.3. Now hitting the entire world on www.rmb.org.au.